Yes, yes.
Welcome back. Welcome back, everybody. Thanks for joining us for another episode of 8 Bits. I'm your host, Brandon Minnick, and with me is, as always, PJ Metz. PJ, how's your week been?
Hello, it's great. Listen, it's a good week. I came back from a work trip, which, man, it's nice to have a work trip, isn't it? And it's just been kind of getting into the swing of things. We're in Q4, quarter four over here. Are you? What's your quarter start?
Microsoft does the fiscal quarter starting in July. So we're in Q2.
Ooh, that's a
Watch
fun
out.
time to start. I have no idea. Like all this quarters stuff, it's all very new to me. For some background, for those of you who are new, my name is PJ Metz. I'm a education evangelist at GitLab, and I came from the world of education. So I'm much more used to semesters and the idea of quarters. While they exist in school, they're just a part of a semester. So even now, as I work as an education evangelist, I have to be aware of semesters and where that lands. So, like, for instance, in the summer, as an education evangelist, that time is a lot of planning for me and not so much interacting with students because they're busy at their summer jobs at what I assume are, they're camp counselors somewhere. That's what I assume everyone does for a summer job. But yeah, I just feel like I'm kind of wrapping up like my first year almost as a person in tech. It's exciting.
Wow, I can't believe it's been a year already.
I mean, it's technically been 6 months and a week, but uh,
Six
it,
rounded up.
but like 2021, is the year I became a tech employee. You know what I mean? So it's finishing up. Like, yeah, thank you, Jellybean. Yes, yeah, technically, congrats on my. I'm gonna start taking those compliments. Absolutely, congrats on my first year. I nailed it. That's right. Well, okay. Look, you didn't have to clarify, but you did. So, what's going on, Brandon? How are you living? What's the deal? What are you working on? Who are you talking to?
Yeah. Well, not tech related, but just wanted to let you know I am exhausted right now. I had a crazy weekend where I went and hiked Mount St. Helena, which is here in the Napa Valley. It's the tallest peak in Napa Valley, which isn't saying too much. It's only about 2,000, maybe 2,500 feet of elevation.
Okay.
But yeah, 10-mile hike, couple thousand feet of elevation on Saturday. Then Sunday, I play with the Napa Valley water polo team, and we have practice Sunday morning. So I had a 2-hour practice Sunday morning, and then we had a tournament. So I had 2 games Sunday afternoon. And then Monday, marathon training started. I'm doing the Napa Valley Marathon in March. So
Oh,
I was already dead tired Monday morning, could like barely roll myself out of bed. Still had to run 5 miles. And so
ooh.
my body
You're doing
is
the full
angry.
26.2?
In March, yeah.
Ah. I too am training for a run, and I don't know if you knew this, but I'm doing the OUC, Orlando Utilities Commission, half marathon in December, and so I'm going to be running
Cool.
13 miles, taking my gigantic. I know viewers don't know it because I'm always sitting, and podcast people don't know it because all they hear is a handsome voice. I am 6'6.5", which is just about 2 meters in international height, and I weigh 270 pounds. And making this body run is hard. I did 6 miles yesterday for a run, so I ran more than you, so I win. Thank you.
Nice work. And
But
it sounds like you'll be in great shape for the Napa Marathon in March. You just keep
listen,
keep training.
if a sponsor wants to pay for me to fly to Napa and do at least the half, I won't do the full marathon. That's not a bucket list thing for me. My mom was like, it's a bucket list. I have to do it. I know people that are like, I should run a marathon. It's not 13. That's fine. And even that's pretty difficult. But if someone wants to do that, pay for me to go to Napa and hang out with Brandon and run half of what he's doing and then wait at the finish line with the Coors Banquet, then sure,
Heck
I'll do
yeah.
that.
We'll even live stream it. There we go, PJ.
Perfect.
That's the idea. We set up a Patreon or a
Yes.
GoFundMe, and then we can live stream it to all of the all the folks who chipped in.
Watch this Puerto Rican
Watch the
curse his
struggle.
creator as he gets to mile 4 and wish he had never done this.
Oh, but being the show about people behind the tech,
That's right.
Speaking of tech stuff, there's so much stuff going on in the world of .NET today because .NET 6 officially launched yesterday, and today is .NET Conf. So if you haven't already, it's actually going on right now. Don't leave us, but you can go to .NETconf.net. We'll put the link in the comments. And even if you don't watch it live, everything's recorded. I've got a couple of videos in there where I'm talking about the .NET MAUI Community Toolkit. But for anybody that's out of the loop, .NET 6 is now officially released, so you can use it for your production apps. Visual Studio 2022 is now released.
Oh my
so
gosh.
again, download that. It's really nice. It's the first 64-bit version of Visual Studio. So if you are working in big projects, it's a lot snappier, which is really great. Or if you're a .NET MAUI developer like me, .NET MAUI is still in preview, but Visual Studio 2022 supports .NET MAUI, at least the Visual Studio 2022 preview does. So you can start building, trying out apps in there today. That's what we use to build the .NET MAUI toolkit. And so yeah, all day yesterday I was just cranking on code because we got all these new goodies. So my day started, I was in meetings in the morning and I'm just downloading everything because, it's like gigs and gigs to download. And then once I got it, started rolling in code to all my libraries because .NET 6 is just faster. Like, actually, PJ, speaking of which, like your website, we did that in .NET 5.
Yeah.
If you just go in and change .NET 5 to .NET 6, your website will run faster.
You
don't even have to do anything.
It's pretty fast. Really, what slows it down is that it's on the free tier of Azure. That's what slows it down. But I mean, I guess I'm going to have to update it to .NET 6, and I guess I'm going to have to get Visual Studio 2022. And I know you and I were trying to meet on Thursdays. It's been hard lately, but we're trying to meet, and we want to start maybe building an app instead of a website, which could be kind of fun. But that's another show. That's a totally different stream, y'all. But yeah, .NET Conf, y'all. That's exciting. And the MAUI toolkit that Brendan's been working on, it's fantastic. For me, work-related, I'm doing like not typical DevRel stuff. The conference I'm going to is not a big tech conference, but I've got one coming up in December called ICIS, which is about information systems. So we're presenting to academics and professors and researchers to show them how GitLab can help them keep track of their code and their data and create environments where they can work more collaboratively, more easily. But like I've said before, I'm an education evangelist. My big thing is that we have GitLab solutions for education. And if you ever know someone who's in college or a professor, or if you happen to know a dean, we offer free licenses for educational use and for research use from GitLab. So websites about gitlab.com/solutions/education. More information there. And that's it for work. And now I feel like we can now proceed with the show proper, because this is 8-bits. This isn't just, hey, PJ and Brandon talk about how you hate running, but love the idea of spending money to run, and tell us what you did at work. We've got a person here today, Brandon. Who do we have today?
Oh, that's right. I'm so excited to bring this person on the show. He and I have been working together in the open source world for, probably over a year now. So can't wait to learn more about him, learn his story, see what he's working on. So without further ado, Pedro Jesus, welcome to the show.
Ta-da!
Hello.
So, Pedro, for those who don't know you, who are you and what do you do?
Okay, so my name is Pedro, but most people call me as Jesus. That is my last name. Today I'm working as a software engineer at ArchTouch. I am focused on Xamarin and mobile stuffs. And On my free time, I do a bunch of open source. As you mentioned it, we work together probably almost 1 year right now, working the same team, the same project. And yeah, but I have been working with open source since I believe 2018, at the end of 2018, and I couldn't stop anymore after starting with that. It's so fun.
It does get addictive. And so so Pedro, I think you're our first guest to come on 8 Bits from Brazil. And so I'm sure we'll have lots of questions in the comments about what being in tech is like as a Brazilian developer. But let's actually start. Let's go way back.
Mhm.
How did you first get into tech or learn how to code?
Uh, Let me remember because when I was a kid, I believe 5 years old, my mother bought me a computer because he was in the university, so she needs to do some works and jobs, and so computers, and that is very rare here in Brazil at 990s. I believe was 1998, 97, something like that. Was a Windows 98 operational system, a super machine with 60 megabytes of RAM and I believe 1 or 2 gigabytes of storage. And I was just, hypnotized by that. Oh my gosh, I want to use that, play with that, and that started my love with computers. And I want to try to create things to that, to communicate to that machine. And then I try to start to code, but most of tutorials and manuals was in English, and here in Brazil, English is not very, people don't learn English here in the school or like other countries, so it's very, very hard to people here to consume content in English. So during my teenagers, I did high school with technical college, and I did mechatronics there. And then I had teachers teaching how to code and how to uh, do that. I believe my first language was C and a little bit of MATLAB. And after that, I meet C sharp. I believe it was 2012, something like that, and I felt in love with that. And my, let's remember, and after that, I just code for fun. And I started the university at uh, control and automation engineering. It's like a mechatronic engineering, just the technical stuff that I did. And there I also start to learning how to code. But there I just saw Java, and when you already know C sharp, Java is more like, yeah. Okay, if you like Java, it's not, it's not a problem. This is totally personal opinion, like, oh, I don't like too much this language. I prefer to use var instead of type. I'll array array list of shenanigans. And and after that, I graduated. I did all uh, my classes, and I tried to find a job in my area, but the economic in Brazil wasn't so good at that time, so could not find any mechatronic or any control automation job to do. And look behind now, I'm very happy to not found anything at that time because I was on the LinkedIn and I saw a bunch of positions for software engineers and Xamarin and stuff like that, and I started to learn Xamarin to do IoT with mobile, try to communicate with Arduino, Raspberry, and stuff like that. So, uh, and okay, I know Xamarin. Let me find an internship or a junior job on that area and see how it goes. And here I am today.
Oh, that's so cool. And I know for me, I mean, I'm incredibly biased. Because I used to work at Xamarin, and so obviously I love Xamarin and love hearing how people find it because I didn't know about it even before I started working there. I was literally just looking for jobs, and there was this company that popped up on LinkedIn that actually my wife had looked at. It was like LinkedIn will tell you it's like this person was looking at this company. It was like for me it was like Kim Minnick looked at Xamarin. I was like, oh, that's a funny sounding company. I wonder what they do. And it was like, oh, they make mobile apps in C#, and they're looking for a customer success engineer. It's like perfect.
I'm successful. I'm an engineer.
And so for to hear Pedro, you kind of the other side of the world also found and started using Xamarin is really cool to me. So speaking of which, you work at ArchTouch on the Xamarin team. What kind of apps are you working on?
Oh, we do a bunch of mobile applications, like a company that build application for the company or the customers. So I passed it. Let me think here. I believe 5 projects or 6 mobile projects there. So bunch of them. We have a case one on our website that is from Hawaiian Airlines. That was a Xamarin Forms application. I worked on that one for a while. It was a really challenging one, very complex application to manage, but also a really fun application to work because the team was great. It's an amazing team. And also a bunch of other kind, like a bank applications or like a social applications, workout applications, and so on and so forth. I believe that is a fun part of that job is because right now I feel that I'm a newbie in the area and I want to learn a lot from a lot of business, a lot of areas. So being a company like that builds mobile application for different customers makes possible to me to get in touch with different business demands, business logics, and industry as well. And probably in the future, I believe that I will be more focused in one product just. But right now, I'm really enjoying to be working the different applications. It's very good to me.
That's pretty cool to be able to do several different projects and applications. That Hawaiian Airlines one, I hope they paid you in like miles for like a bonus. It's like, and as a bonus for working on this, go to Hawaii because that'd be amazing. I don't know if you can tell. Maybe I'm dressed for it. I'm ready. But that idea of making these apps, and you said you do like some fitness apps too. I'm sure Brandon and I, now that we're training to run for long distances, are using some fitness apps. It'd be cool if it was one that you had worked on. But that it's interesting to think about how these apps get made. Are they having another company come in and help make it? What's the background behind it? What's it built with? What's the infrastructure like? And this is something that before I never even thought about. And now as someone who's, trying to sell an environment in which to build apps, it's something that I need to consider much more often. It's really neat. I just love this whole world of tech. I love the dynamic of our show of Brandon, who doesn't he's not like the expert, but he knows a bunch of stuff. And me, I'm just like this wide-eyed ingenue who's like, what an interesting world this is. When you got into this company and you started working on it, what are some challenges of that sort of relationship with a client where they're like, we want this app, and you're like, well, here's how we'll build it, and the sort of back and forth. What is that like? Can you give us some insight into that sort of structure?
Let me think. Because I did not have too much contact with the clients, normally I don't participate of that negotiations. So I'm more like the hammer. The guy just point, hey, punch there, and I'll go there and do the job. So, but we work like with different teams. We build applications for using Kotlin, Swift, and Flutter, and also Xamarin. So we have a very plural team right there. So normally the people that take care of the business, they ask the clients what are their needs. So like, hey, you want a mobile application that will look the same across all platforms, or you use some native capabilities, native APIs, very often like GPS, Bluetooth, and stuff like that. And how is your goal? Like, is I IoT stuff, or is it just application, mobile application stuff? So based on that, they decided which technology they will use to build the application for the client. But normally, if the client like knows a little bit about technology or has a technology team inside and they already use some technology, let's say that the client has .NET background, so makes sense to use Xamarin there because you can share a bunch of code. But if the client doesn't have that, we are moving to another areas. And sometimes we work with another companies because of the backend. Sometimes we work on backend as well. We build the backend, but normally we just take care about the mobile application project.
It's awesome.
Yeah. So you mentioned it sounds like you've personally used a couple different technologies. Is that right? So you said Flutter, was React Native one of them as well?
Yeah, I believe they use it, but no, I'm just the Xamarin team.
Mm.
To be honest, I just know how to code in C Sharp. I know how to read Swift. I can read another languages, but if you hey code this in Swift, I go, I don't know how to do that.
I'm the same way, man. Yeah, I'm. Well, technically, my first language was Java, but yeah, I'm C sharp through and through, and yeah, same. Like I can read Swift or Objective C or pretty much any language. Once you know one, you can kind of figure out what's going on. But yeah, if somebody was like, make a whole application in JavaScript, they're like, huh?
You should have. Yeah, you should have seen me. I was trying to create something for work, and it was written in Ruby. So it was using the GitLab API, but it was using I guess, wrapper. It's called, where you like put something. So like you can use Ruby to access the API. So I had to kind of learn a little bit of Ruby to try and make it work a little bit better. This tool that I was working on, and I remember like looking at the code and going, all right, I kind of know what's happening, but having to Google things like how do you do if else in Ruby, and just it was eye opening because it was kind of like in the Matrix when the numbers start to make sense, and I was like, oh, I kind of know what's going on, but at the same time, I was like, also, I know nothing, so I'm not going to be putting Ruby on my resume. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is interesting. Like, because Pedro touched on there's a bunch of technologies out there for mobile developers like us and soon to be PJ once we get you cranking on your first mobile app with .NET Maui. What? But yeah, I'd say for the average tech consumer, you just see a mobile app on your phone, and there's so many decisions that go into how that's being made. And the first one is just what technology do you want to use to build it. So there's cross-platform options like Flutter, React Native, Xamarin / .NET Maui, where you can basically still create a native app, but only have to write the code once. So with Xamarin and .NET Maui, it's all in C Sharp. With React Native, you're writing it all in JavaScript, and with Flutter, you're writing it all in Dart. But then each platform has its own technologies. So if you want to use all of Apple's tools that they put out, you can build it in Swift or Objective-C using Xcode. Or if you want to use Google's tools, you can do it all in Java or Kotlin using Android Studio. Or there's so many options out there. But at the end of the day, like Pedro was saying earlier, it's more about what's your team do? Do you already know JavaScript? Okay, great. Use React Native. Or you already have servers run in .NET. All right, let's talk about Xamarin and .NET Maui. So lots and lots of different options out there. I'm curious, PJ, since you're kind of still new to the tech world.
Very new.
Did you ever know that all this stuff existed? Just as a Android app user?
No. Okay, so I always consider myself like smart with tech, but it was in the way that like if you handed me a computer, I could find the settings and I could fix a problem. But it was like problems that baby boomers were having, where it's like all of a sudden, like if my computer's not running fast, and I'd be like, oh, it's because you downloaded a million browser extensions somehow, and like the top of your browser is now this thick with like Ask Jeeves on there. But I always consider myself a little savvy. I could jailbreak a phone if I had to. But when it came to actually making the apps, the idea of different languages, I used to think that there was just the programming language that everybody used. That you went back in time and there was like basic, and after basic you learned C, and then C++ was plus better than C was, and I just figured there was a language that everybody used. So when you suggested and you helped me start learning with C sharp, I was like, okay, so C sharp. And then it was like, okay, there's also JavaScript. I was like, okay, but and then it's like, and JavaScript is used specifically for this. And if you want to do web design, you got to make sure you know HTML and CSS and JavaScript. And I was like, okay. And then someone was like, Rust. And I was like, and it suddenly there's this whole world. And I was like, okay, there's a million languages. And then someone said Kubernetes, and I thought that was a language for about a week. So there's a lot that you, like you said, as just a consumer of tech, you don't know. You have no clue. And the idea that Android apps and iOS apps are written differently is something that the average consumer isn't going to know. They're just going to know which side of the phone battle they land on and why.
Right. That's always one of my favorites, when folks just are complaining about like, oh, how come they haven't added this feature to Android yet? Or how come they don't have an Android app yet? It's only on iOS. It's like, well, it's really expensive and it takes a lot of time, and you got to pay companies like ArchTouch and Pedro to figure all this stuff out.
That's right. So Pedro, I have an app idea I'm going to pitch to you right now, and I need you to tell me how much it's going to cost. No, I'm kidding.
Oh, those are the worst.
The worst.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, go for it, Pedro.
So yeah, as PJ mentioned, like we have a bunch of languages there, and when I started, like my background wasn't a computer science or engineering, software stuffs. So I put something on my head, like I want to be fluent in one language, and I choose C# to be that language. Like language that I will be, I can do everything that I want with that language. I know how that works. But also I want to learn other languages, like I mentioned that I can read in other languages. But I believe that for people that want to be in tech, the best, I would say, choice or point that you should do is like ask yourself which area that you would like to work on: web, mobile, desktop, AI. And after that, look out the languages and tools that you have to work on that specific area and choose you want to go deeper. And because I feel like when I talk with developers that know a bunch of languages, they don't know one language too much further, so they cannot take advantage of that language, like performance optimizations or strong paths of that language. So,
and that's the struggle. That's the struggle of being new at this, is not kind of knowing where to start. And that's why, as someone like Brandon said, who's new, I had Brandon to guide me. Now he came with his own biases, so I learned C#. But to be fair, it was actually a great foundation for me. And not knowing what I wanted to do or where I wanted to go, I remember Brandon said, okay, like I think I had just learned like switch case, and he was like, okay, you have to build something now. You can't just do like the tutorials. You need to create something. And I was like, a website, I guess. And he was like, okay, we can do a website. He was obviously sad I didn't pick app, but we did that. And not knowing where to go, like you said, it can be tempting to say, okay, I learn a little of this and then I learn a little of that, and then you can tell people you know a lot of languages, but it's almost always better in the long run to pick one thing and get really good at it, as long as it's applicable. Like what is it, COBOL? That like a bunch of like old bank systems are. Don't pick
Yeah,
something old, something applicable. You know.
I mean,
yeah,
COBOL developers are making like $200,000+ a year because there's only like 5 of them left.
That's right.
But
They can charge whatever they want.
so yeah, if it's super old, then maybe you can make a lot of money doing it. But yeah, speaking of languages, Pedro, you mentioned that English isn't super popular in Brazil, especially if we have colleagues like that live in. Well, I'm blanking the Netherlands. We have Jens here in the comments from
Right.
Denmark, where I feel like I've been a couple times and they speak better English than me, even though it's the only language I know. So what is it like being a developer in Brazil? Is English expected for all Brazilian developers?
yeah. They have like that myth because a lot of companies they put on the requirements that you should know English, but the daily basis you never use English for anything. You know, you don't have to talk English or communicate in English. So normally for companies that just work for Brazilians, they don't ask English. And companies like ArchTouch or other companies that have foreigners clients, you need to speak English. Me, for example, speak English in all my day jobs. So I need to communicate in English, express myself in English. And it's kind of hard, I would say, for bunch of people because sometimes I forgot some words or get a little struggled on some things, but I can't communicate very well. That is, and this is very, very, when you pick up data, like 1% of people in Brazil are fluent. So this is very, very low level. And it's very expensive as well to pay for English classes here because it's I don't know why, but they put a lot of the professors and the schools that teach English are very expensive here. So and I don't know why. So for people like that are more that don't have too much money, they cannot learn English very easily. They need to do by themselves, like uh, using what is that? I have a friend that learned by himself. I think that he was listening music and put the letter and the translation and just like that. And also watching movies and TV shows and put the subtitles in English as well. But
Mm-hmm.
it's not very easy to do that by your own, but yeah, some people need to do that. And I believe because of that, we don't have too much remote companies hiring in Brazil. Like Microsoft, for example, we don't have too much jobs in .NET team or developers advocates, probably because of that. When they look the data, they say, oh, it doesn't make sense to hire people from there because the majority doesn't speak English very well. And it's kind of a balance thing.
Interesting. But I have to imagine you. So even though it might be rare, the fact that you are fluent in English probably opens up a lot more opportunities to you then. Um, so what would you recommend? Let's say you've got a nephew in Brazil that wants to start learning to code. What do you recommend that they do first? Where do they start?
I would say logic because that we have a bunch of material in Portuguese as well. So just do logic, math logic and stuff like that. After that, try to learn some language. Focus on area, like I said before, and go to the languages. And we have a bunch of 101 tutorials translated in Portuguese, so that is easy to consume. But when you start to thinking like a senior level or stuff like that, you really need to know English because we don't have too much translated content. And one thing that I really like on this code area is that you don't need to have a, you don't need to graduate, don't need to do a university to work with that. Different from like medicine, for example. You need to study that, you need to graduate that, and after that you can work. And okay, this is good. I do it because I don't want to trust anyone to to take care of my health. But I really like this is a very democratic area because you can learn by yourself, and we have here in Brazil a lot of people uh, publish articles and video tutorials teaching how to code and how to do specific X with that technology, and that's really great. But also not having that demand to you needed to study in the university or a college for that is kind of sometimes it's kind of bad for me. Sometimes I like to see what the community is doing here in Brazil, like in Portuguese, and I go to some articles, and I already saw articles in advanced topics like benchmarks, performance, and memory management, and like garbage collection. And it's really good to see normal people doing that because otherwise you have that thing with a professor, but also it's kind of bad because some articles have mistakes there. They put some code wrong or some concept wrong. So this is the bad part of not doing a graduation there where you can trust on that information. So when I think in technology and when I think in Brazil that you don't need to pay a university or don't need to care about that is good because anyone can apply for those positions. And I know very people that were poor, and when they become a software engineer, his life changed for better. And this is really good. But also, the people need to be careful about the content that they consume because you cannot trust 100% in our content because you cannot tell if that is correct or there is some bug on that sample code or a mistake.
I have definitely been bitten by the copy paste with a bug inside of it before.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're like, oh, this looks like it fixes it, and you put it in, and you're like, oh, a new error, fantastic, and yeah, it's difficult out there. You don't know who to trust and who can really give you the best information. And speaking of who to trust, we're gonna take a quick ad break. And we're going to find out who we can trust in this next ad. So we'll be back in a second. Hi, if you're hearing my voice, that means you've been listening to or watching 8 Bits with Brandon and PJ. And we're here to talk to you about your product and how it can help you in your life by do whatever your product does. So, if you're an avid listener of the show, or you watch us on Twitch, then you'll know that your product is right for you. I need more Hawaiian shirts. Just realized that now that I've recorded the ad in this shirt, for those of you listening to the podcast, I'm wearing the pineapple Hawaiian shirt that I wore in the ad clip as well. But that's a real thing. Listen, I know it looks good and I use it often. But that's a real thing. We'd love to have your ad in this show. So if you're interested in giving us some money to say that we use your product all the time, or giving us your product. So just contact us. hello@8bits.tv. Your ad people. We know how it works. Contact us and let us know what we can do for you.
Absolutely.
And that's the elevator pitch. All right.
So Pedro, tell us what are some of the open source projects that you're working on now? You mentioned earlier that you found open source, was it 2 years ago, or I think you said 2018, and kind of fell in love. So what was it about it that keeps you coming back, and what are you working on today?
Great. So when I learned Xamarin and C#, I didn't pay anything to anyone. Everything was free content. There was two big workshops made by Microsoft MVP here in Brazil, and I could learn Xamarin from that and a little bit of C# as well. And after that, I try to give back to the community what the community gave to me. Like, okay, I will try to write some articles and record some videos teaching people how to do X or Y, but I am not very good on that because I always was thinking like, hey, I will write a blog post about it, and never worked. But I like to code, and okay, let me see what I can do. And I found on open source a way to give back to the community. But when I was on the open source, I realized that I'm not just giving back to the community. I was receiving something back as well. Like uh, I started to contribute to the Xamarin Essentials, and after that, I jumped to the Xamarin Forums. And the Xamarin Forums, I be there like almost one or 2 years contributing. And the people on the team were very welcome and very newbie friendly. Like they teach me a lot of how to code, how to use Git. I really learned how to use Git on open source world. My first rebase was Shane from the Xamarin Forums.net Maui team. Hi Shane, and was a PR for me and just asked, hey, do this rebase because we need to update our branch to our target branch, and how I do that. And he was posting a lot of comments and pasting code, copy and paste this Git command here, and that will do that, and so that is it, and that's how I learned how to do Git, and I also improved my code skills like in the infinite level. I cannot measure that because having the community and Microsoft seniors and software engineers there doing code review for my code and teaching me, hey, instead of doing this approach, you could do that because of this and that. So I would say that in these 3 years of open source, I evolved a lot. So this is one thing that always makes me come back to open source because it's a place that I always keep learning something new. And also I met a bunch of people like Randall, like Gerald, Andrew, and Chan, and a lot of people. Probably I missed a lot of names here, but because there are a lot of people in that also really great. People are around the world that I probably never meet if it wasn't the open source world. So
Important. It's so important. And like think about like learning programming languages in like the 90s when they were just like, what was it, like .NET use groups and like the really, really simple early stages. And like now there's so many projects where you can go and not just, like you said, not just contribute, but you gain something from it. The 3 years you've been contributing to open source, you said it's leveled you up like it's immeasurable. And that's what we're trying to make sure people know is open source is a place for you to get better. Yes, there are expectations that you're contributing, that you're helping build it better, but it's immeasurable the benefit that you get from participating in an open source community, an active open source community. Got to do it.
Yeah, that is true. Like right now, the community toolkit, that one of the projects that I'm working on. I like to work like in how we will transition for the Xamarin Forms to Maui, some APIs changes like the drop effect APIs. Also, we will need our handlers to handle. So I also try to figure out how will be the best way to do that. And that is kind of like architecture software. So I will never do that if it wasn't the open source, because on my daily basis, I just code a mobile application. So everything that I need to think is how to build a mobile application. Now I am thinking how to build a SDK or or a package. So I need to care about a lot of things that I don't need to care about on my work daily basis. So it's very fantastic to me that I can learn a bunch of things there. It's like a safe environment. If I screwed up with the code, I will not be fired. So that is the best part.
That's right. You heard it here first. They can't fire you from open source, y'all.
Yeah, I agree so much, and something I've been having a lot of fun. So, like Pedro mentioned, we have a toolkit called the Xamarin Community Toolkit. Now that .NET Maui's coming out, we're creating the .NET Maui Community Toolkit, where essentially it's think of all that code you copy paste between all of your either Xamarin apps or .NET Maui apps. The toolkits are here to put that into one NuGet package for you, so you don't have to copy paste that code anymore. And you got just some real quick and easy converters, behaviors, views, UI layouts that you can use to just help people code faster. But with this new toolkit for Maui, it's been a lot of fun because we learned a lot. Or maybe a better way to put it is we made a lot of mistakes with the Xamarin Community Toolkit that we've learned from. And so when setting up this new repo, it's like, well, I always hated this. So how do we avoid that? And I've been having a lot of fun kind of setting up those guardrails. So things like something that was tough, or that is tough in open source, is there's all sorts of levels of both expertise and also levels of contribution / commitment. So you might get anything from a senior engineer who takes like 5 seconds to open up an issue on your repo to say like, hey, you guys should create this new feature. And it's like, okay, thanks, but that's not really helpful for us. Like, have you written any code? Have you thought about its API design, its usage, the naming? And so on the Xamarin Community Toolkit, we got a lot of, to be frank, we'll say low effort noise like that. And so it was difficult to know when new issues were coming in, like which one is somebody just, oh, I wish they had this, so I'm going to kind of throw a dart, and which ones are somebody actually put thought and put together a proposal for it. And so we've created this whole new workflow for the Community Toolkit to where we're now going to have discussions first anytime you want to talk about new features. And once the new feature is really, we've chiseled away at it and we've got something really solid, we can let you open up a feature request. And same thing with pull requests. We would get pull requests out of the blue where, I mean, don't get me wrong, some of them are great, but when you're not expecting it, that's a lot to then digest. And especially if it touches a lot of files or if it's thousands of lines of code that I've never seen before, and now I have to sit down and review it, that's going to take a while. Whereas with this new process, by the time we get to the PR phase, we've already agreed on everything, the design, we've approved everything. So the PR should just basically be checking a box like, oh, yep, that looks exactly like we talked about. And so, yeah, I've been having a lot of fun, not just architecting this new library, but also like trying to build out this repo so it's almost dummy proof, so that if anybody comes to it and if you try to open up a new issue, it'll guide you through the process. Or let's say you do open a PR. Well, we have our continuous integration, continuous delivery pipeline that will automatically trigger. So we'll run all the unit tests and we'll make sure everything works, so that can also help guide you along the way. C# even has these things called editor configs where you can set up rules. So there's nothing worse than looking at a code base and like this file is completely differently written than this file over here. So setting up rules to where like, hey, we have a certain look and feel we want to do. Like C#10 introduced file scope namespaces, and those are great. So we're gonna throw an error if you don't do it. and so we can do that. And so yeah, I've learned a ton just playing around with that, just trying to think of like, if I were to write code for this, what would I do, and kind of how can we shepherd people down that certain path. So yeah, huge shout out to open source.
That's right.
I love
Get
it.
involved.
I learned so much from it. And yeah, Pedro, I love the story where that's how you learned. And so that's also how you're giving back. And PJ, I'm curious, as you're still fairly new in this journey.
Yeah. Yeah, the young
similar
ingenue. Actually this particular conversation and a conversation I was having with a colleague of mine is making me think, okay, like I think it's time to find an open source community that I can start contributing to and start small and get involved because like I said, I've only been in tech for about 6 months, and in that time I've been slowly just focusing on understanding my company and our product. And now that I feel like I have a better handle on that, I think it's time for me to really like sort of say, okay, that's my job, but like where am I getting better? Where am I building my developer skills? Because I'm not building my developer skills at work because I don't really write code for work necessarily. So what am I going to go and be a part of? And this show, this specific show, and Pedro, like something clicked in the past like 40 minutes where I was like, no, I need to start contributing. I need to get out there and find something and do it. And so I think that's the next thing for me is finding a place where I can contribute, starting really small, getting used to the community. Like you said, Brandon, there's going to be some rules and ways that things are done that I have to get used to. You can't just join a community and understand things immediately. You have to take the time. So maybe you might see me lurking around in your repos, open source people out there. So if you see Benson around, say hey and invite him in because I am nervous.
Actually, I'm curious, Pedro, do you have any recommendations for PJ?
Yeah.
Well, let me think. When I started, I worked with Xamarin and I really like that technology. So, okay, I want to contribute with this. And so, like, if you mentioned that you and Brando are building a website. So, like, if you are using ASP.NET or Entity Framework, maybe ASP.NET is a huge project to start to contribute. It's like maybe it's very hard because I don't know, there are millions and millions of lines of code there. But you see, okay, there is the ASP.NET, and I use this package. Let's say Refit. Okay, I can use Refit to start to contributing and look forward. I believe that you will find any open source project hosted by Microsoft or Google or Facebook or any other company will be very welcome to you.
That sounds great. The idea of finding something established and saying, like, I'm obviously not going to get in there and be like, ASP.NET, I'm here to fix things. Like you said, it's millions of lines of code. But it made me realize that's something that I should be looking for. I should be looking for open source tools that I want to use, and I should be contributing to make them better and to learn the tool itself better. Because a lot of times I feel like this. You're using a tool and you're like, oh, I know how to use it, but you're really only using it for your specific use case, right? So actually going in and finding other use cases and finding other ways it can be used can help make it make you better at using it and help where you can help make the tool itself better. So yeah, that website that Brandon and I built. Honestly, Brandon built that website. I was early on. He doesn't agree, but
PJ
he's modest.
All the code. I just
you said
so
you can go back and watch the old Twitch videos. You'd be like, okay, so on line 57, why don't you type this? And I would type it, and then you'd be like, congrats, you did it. You're like the dad saying, like, I'm not holding the back of the bike. I'm not holding your bike, and you are holding the bike. But no, we built this website with ASP.NET. I loved the experience. We're hopefully going to be transitioning to actually building an app, and honestly, like, I'm very excited to start learning some Xamarin. I think that'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, we were thinking, and Pedro, I can say this because you'll know what I'm talking about, is that with PJ's website, it's ASP.NET Core with MVC and Razor pages, but what we were thinking is use like the Blazor for mobile apps that's kind of new in .NET 6 and see if we just kind of like jam it into a mobile app first. So that's what we're at least going to try. But
we'll see. We'll do our best.
I know that technology is also experimental, but
yeah,
it hasn't stopped us before.
I've heard the term Blazor, so I'm ahead of the game from where I was back in October 2020. So
That sounds really fun. I
Yeah.
also didn't touch on Blazor for mobile yet. I'm not even Blazor, but I need to find time to play with that because it looks great. Just the idea to not need to have Electro anymore makes me a little bit happy.
Yeah.
Nice.
And actually, that's the other thing. We talked about all these different platforms for making mobile apps, but even like desktop apps or websites. Oh gosh, thousands. I feel like. Well,
The applications are endless.
Yeah.
Pedro, Pedro, thanks so much for joining us today. We're just coming up on the top of the hour. What closing words do you want to share with the folks, or what do you want to promote before we end the show today?
Well, first, thanks for having me and for this invitation. I really appreciated that. And well, the my final words for people is like if someone is new on the technology or wants to be in the technology, and no matter how old or how new or younger are you, just go for it. It's really easy to find content there, like tutorials, texts, and articles and stuff like that to do the first steps when you are a little bit confident, because I know when we talk to contribute to open source, we have a little bit of fear because we think, oh, how the world will see my work, how the world will see my code, and how my code is ugly and how I code bad. But don't think that way. Just think that is a new chance to learn, have fun, and probably inside the open source community you will find someone to mentor you, and you will become better, and you probably will find your first job, and you'll be very happy to work at home, wearing pajamas and stuff like that. I mean, it's the best job ever.
I'm
Well
definitely wearing
said.
pajamas right now. That was an accurate statement. But yeah, just like Pedro said, y'all, you don't have to know what the final step is in your process. You just have to know what your next step is, and sometimes it's something simple and easy. Just open something up, get started, type a question into Google, and take the step, whatever that may be.
Absolutely. Well, Pedro, beautiful closing words. Thank you so much for joining this week. And thank you for listening. We'll see you again next week. Don't forget to subscribe to the show at 8bits.tv. You can also subscribe on the YouTube channel. Tell your friends about us. And if you're interested in supporting the show, reach out at hello@8bits.tv. And we will see you next week.
Have a good